Welcome back for the last part of our program inside the room, because of course later on we have some networking and food and drinks again for you. I hope you have enjoyed the workshops, from design thinking to tackle life wicked problems to the power of sisterhood in business. And this afternoon we also have a panel for you with Guus Freriks of Deep Tech XL. We have Simone Brummelhuis and Beata van Dagovic. Perfect, she says. Okay, but first we start with a nice interviews on stage. Ingelou, the floor is yours.
So we are honored to announce our next speaker, a woman with a mission about a striking difference that has gone long unrecognized, the female heart. A heart that turned out to work so differently than the male heart. Researching this in Europe, raising awareness and helping women became her life mission. She obtained her PhD at the age of 50 and developed into a true cardio-feminist. She was even allowed to address the UN twice on the subject. Angela Maas is now one of the most influential doctors in the Netherlands. After 40 years, she's quitting as a cardiologist at Radboud UMC, but her fight for gender equality and equity in healthcare continues.
Yeah.
Give her a very warm applause.
Thank you.
So in April you gave your farewell speech, but
yeah.
You still have a lot to do, right?
Yeah, well, my husband says, well, nothing has changed since you you said goodbye. And I recognize that because there are so many things to do, there are so many nice things to do. I still have 6 PhDs running. I'm in several committees, grant committees in the Netherlands, but also abroad, several countries. I'm in 5 journals involved, so there is a lot to do, and we still need to do a lot to reach gender equality in healthcare, because women are still behind. If you look at equality, if you look at the way they are treated by doctors, you know, women are still not taken seriously on various fields in medicine.
Yeah, so I have to be honest, I'm biased in this interview. So my mother is one of your patients. So she was also someone who had problems that were not recognized as heart problems. So your fight had a huge impact on my family, and I think on many families. And she's here also today. I'm not going to point her out, but it's one of them. But it had a huge impact on my family and on many families. So how is that for you?
Well, I'm happy that I have been able to make a change for so many women that I have met in the outpatient clinic. But still, I'm a bit worried because there are still colleagues who think, you know, it's not necessary to make a difference. You know, sometimes colleagues say, well, I don't discriminate. Men and women are equal for me. But I think, and we know, that it's not about discrimination, because we all have similar rights. That's not the point, that's not the discussion. But I think we should make the difference when the difference is relevant. And if you look at healthcare, there are so many specialities, and specifically cardiovascular disease, which is a huge part of diseases that we get along our life course, that the differences among men and women are huge, enormous. So what we need to do, we need to practice gender-sensitive cardiology care. And I have many sisters, mostly women abroad, who are also in the field of cardiology, so we have a big network. We also now have a very nice network that you can have a look on the internet. That's womanas1.org. That's an organization, a web-based organization, also to promote careers for the younger colleagues. So we do get a lot of funding from the industry, and you know, I think 6 weeks ago we gave another 10 grants of 50,000 euro to, talented young female cardiologists. And we are going to expand this organization into all different fields in healthcare. So also cardiovascular surgery, vascular medicine, but perhaps we will also go to oncology, because we as senior cardiologists, we don't want the younger generation to experience the difficulties that we had. We want to push them forward, and we need to do so.
But it's still a struggle after a lifetime of working on it.
Yeah, well, you learn to deal with it. I mean, it's a struggle if you want to convince people who don't want to be convinced, if you try, to pull at a dead horse. So I left the dead horses behind, and I tried to find where the energy is. So, and there's a lot of energy, collaborating with different disciplines, also with, technology. I'm doing a very nice project with a young technology startup company, to empower patients in healthcare, that they can do exercise at home, that they can, do measures at home, blood pressure, all kinds of things, to use biofeedback, artificial intelligence. So we need to empower the patients, and we need to collaborate more with different disciplines, because in medicine, it's still, we have the brain, we have the heart, we have the renal function, but it's all part of the same system. Yeah. It's all connected. And we need to look at a life course, because the life course tells you stories about what's going to happen in the future. So I think that's an important development, and we need to continue to promote that.
So when was the first time you realized that there was a difference between the female and the male heart? When did it come your way?
Well, when I was a student in the 70s, I studied in Groningen. There were, in the beginning of the 70s, there were papers telling that when a man had a heart attack, that the women needed to have courses because they could be the reason for this heart attack. Publications in...
Great material, yeah.
In very renowned peer-reviewed journals, the British Medical Journal, that's a very stupid paper. But, that women are very demanding. Men did the work, and then in the weekends, women wanted to do painting of the walls, other things at home. So because
they were
women,
so busy, yeah.
Women were so demanding, the man got a heart attack.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That has changed.
It's not anymore in the education books.
No, this is not anymore. Yeah, well. And what was in training for cardiologists in the 80s, I learned that women were strange. They didn't fit in the model that we had. We had a model of how a cardiac patient should be. And the men, they were in that model, but, the women, they never fitted in the model. So he laughed a bit. I laughed too, because, the stupid symptoms and always something wrong with a woman. But when I was finished with my training, and I was, working as a cardiologist for a few years, I felt uncomfortable, uneasy. And at the time, at the beginning of the 90s, women were more self-confident.
The feminist wave did help, right?
Yes, they asked me critical questions.
Your patients?
Their patients. And they even got angry at me because, I was just telling stories about their symptoms and I just didn't know. And I remember one day that one patient was very angry. And she said to me, "Why don't you know what I have? You're just telling me stories." She got angry. And this was in 91. I remember it clearly. It was a turning moment. And at that period of time, the first publications came about gender, sex differences in cardiology. So it gained my attention, and it still has my attention. So I never lost it.
It was your turning point, and then
it was a turning point.
And then you thought, okay, I have to do more with this. So you started your PhD as well, mid-career.
Yeah, because if you want to be taken seriously in a culture which is still macho-dominated, male-dominated, you have to make scientific efforts.
Yeah.
So in the 90s, I tried I wanted to know what estrogens did, and also after menopause, the decline in estrogens, what estrogens did on the vascular system, a very complicated question. So I went to several universities to talk with the bosses, men, and so I wanted to do a trial to give women after menopause estrogens back and to have a look at the vessels, the coronary arteries. And it also happens when you give women estrogens back after menopause, their periods will start again. So I discussed that with the male professors. Oh, no, I don't want to talk about that. So, you know.
And then what did you do?
Well, so it wasn't the right moment. I couldn't find, someone who wanted to take the subject up. So in the end, a cardiologist from the US did this trial, which was quite a successful study. And then in '97, a worldwide study came around in 10,000 women. And a friend of mine, a male cardiologist, he said, well, you are interested in the subject, you have to be the Dutch representative. So he took care that I became the Dutch representative, so I'm very grateful. And in that big study, I got my network, I got the sub-studies for my PhD. So in my 40s, I worked on my PhD, and I was just 50 when I got the degree.
And how was that, to do your PhD mid-career?
Well, it's a very nice way to do it at mid-career. Because often when you're young, it's perhaps more easy, but you get a subject that's not completely your subject. It's a subject of your professor. And now it was my subject. So I was a bit the boss of the subject. And, it gave a huge impulse, what is it, to my career to develop myself in a better scientific way. So it was the right time for me. So I can recommend it to many of you who still think, well, I want to do something. Do it. You're never too old.
And the results of your research, was it taken seriously straight away?
No.
No.
No, it's still not taken seriously by many people. But, there are still many people who don't want to learn something about sex and gender differences in medicine, who say, well, no, I get ill when I hear the word gender, I don't like it. So they think it's, it's something of this era, a bit a modern thing.
It will blow over, yeah.
But it won't, because the evidence is huge, it's growing.
Yeah. But isn't that really frustrating? I mean, you're working for...
Well, I'm used to it, and I think it's most frustrating for the patients.
Yeah.
Because I worked for the patients during my career, and the patients were the basis of my inspiration. It started with an angry patient, and, well, it ended perhaps with happy patients, but I couldn't serve everyone. So... but I think we managed to make a change that it won't go back to 40 years ago.
And did you ever talk again to the angry patient?
No, I can't remember her name. No, I don't know.
No.
No.
So it is very hard to change a very conservative healthcare system.
Yeah.
And you started a big movement. It's also in Europe, a lot of research.
It's going on.
It's growing on. So how can we continue this further? So what will it take to implement this in healthcare?
Well, I think the most important change we have to make in healthcare is to empower patients more and more and more. Because the old-fashioned system that patients take a day off, they go into the traffic, they pay a lot for their, fuel, then they wait in the waiting room and they are inside for 5 minutes. It's outdated, it's old-fashioned. We have done patient care during the past 2 years with the COVID crisis by internet. And, you don't have to see each other every time. If you know a patient, so I think for the first visit, it's important to meet each other to get a feeling. But afterwards, you can do a lot of consultancy from their home. And patients, you can learn patients to do a lot of measurements themselves at home and to transfer it to their dossier in the hospital. So, but it's still not well funded. So the problem with innovation in healthcare is that the funding system is very, very slow. It doesn't change so much. And I just heard last week that the video consulting that we had during the COVID crisis is now over.
Oh, really? It's
so
completely...
we're going back in time. Yeah. So this is a really missed opportunity because it's not paid any longer. That's a decision of the new ministry. And I think that's a big problem. And I think we can do a lot more to facilitate patient care, to empower patients themselves. And what I've learned from the female patients is that they also want to collaborate with you. They're very helpful to give you data, what they have. They write down things in diaries, etc., etc. It's very helpful. So women also want to help the doctor to go to the appropriate diagnosis, which is important.
Yeah, so they also want to give the information.
Yes, and we need that.
Yeah. So if there's questions for Angela, you can raise your hand and we can also... I see one in the back. Maybe Hilda, you can... Oh, yeah. 1 second. So if you have any questions for Angela, you can also raise your hand. Okay, good.
Hi, my name is Annemiek Bles. I'm from Brainport Development. You have a room of about 200, 300 women, potential ambassadors of your quest. How can we help you to
Well,
do more?
I think women are now, they raise their voice. And so the way you talk with the doctor has changed. We used to sit opposite the patient and we used to dictate what they had to do. Now we are sitting next to the patients and we discuss what is the problem, what do you think about the problem, what do I think, and what are we going to do together with this problem. So show your doctor, the healthcare system, that you have an opinion. Because one thing that has gone wrong is the development of the guidelines. We needed guidelines many years ago because, it was a mess. Every doctor did something different. So we started to make guidelines. But the guidelines nowadays are sometimes so rigid, they don't fit with the patient who's there. It's about, an ideal patient who is not sitting there. And if you look at many guidelines in cardiology that are still actual nowadays, it's about a patient, not specified. And then at page 200, there is a small paragraph about special populations and 5 lines about women. We are a special population in healthcare. We are half of the population. So I think it's important that that you learn your doctors, male, female, doesn't matter, because your doctors always adapt to the old-fashioned symptoms. That's what we do. Try to educate your doctors. We need that.
Okay, let's do that.
A question before you, yeah.
Okay, sorry about it. Thank you so far. Just want to ask you, you said focus on where the energy is, focus on who you can convince and who is open to that, but there must be some resistance, right? How do you deal with that? Or do you just do not deal with it at all?
Oh yes, well, it doesn't hurt me anymore. I know there is resistance, but I know, you know, the worst people, I always try to hit them in one way or another with a very good paper or another kind of thing or publication. I remember many years ago, I was pregnant for the second time. My youngest son is now, the second child is 31. So, well, I had first a pregnancy without complications, no problem. And with him, I told my colleagues at 6.5 months that I was pregnant. Well, of course, they could see it at that time. But I didn't want to bother them with a second pregnancy. And one of the guys who had 4 children, he told me, he said, well, 1 child is enough for you. And what I did in 2006, so many years later, I had an interview in Circulation, which is one of the top cardiology journals in the US. And I wrote this, they wrote this down with the name of the guy who told me that.
Very nice.
And I sent it around to all cardiologists in the Netherlands. You know, I can do things like that. And so it may take 20 years before I take revenge, but if there is an opportunity, I take it.
Love it, thank you.
Thank you. I have a question here and on the side over there. Maybe you can throw it into the audience. Can you please help me in the middle? Yeah. We have a catch box so you can throw it over. Yes, perfect. Great. And then? Yes. Okay.
Hi, I'm Sylvia ten Houten, a female founder of a now bankrupt startup. That also happens. This was a yes-self startup with bio-composites made out of agricultural waste. 8 years I solidly plodded along. But the question is, I recall maybe a couple of weeks ago, there was an article in the general news about, for the first time in 2022, the woman's body was modeled in a 3D way digitally. And I have to say that my mouth fell open. I'm listening to your stories, they're very inspirational, but it's also a little bit sad for us. But how is that even possible that in 2022, just now, something so major to actually model a female body being different from a male body, that happens so late?
Yeah, it's still amazing. Well, the view on healthcare and the model of the patient was male-oriented since the Greek period, since the Greek and Romans. So for many years, and if you look at pictures from paintings from, there's a very nice painting from 1880, I think, you know, medical students getting a lecture about a female patient, and she is lying here hysterical, and you know all the students are male, and so the concept of the patient has been a man, and women were only important because of the reproduction, because we carry the children, well, I think it has taken, well, perhaps it started a bit in the 60s, that when they looked at cardiology, they saw, well, women are a bit protected when they're young with estrogen hormones, but they don't get cardiovascular disease. That was the perception. Perhaps we should give men also female hormones that they won't get cardiovascular disease anymore. That was the use of the female patient. And that was a very interesting study because all those men, they died, a lot of them. So the study was stopped, and the concept was crazy. But, well, yes, I think it has been necessary also for women themselves and more female students and more female, role models to get the female patient onto the stage. So it has happened like this. But there's a very nice website, perhaps you know, genderedinnovations.eu. And that's a website, it comes from Stanford, and you can see how important sex and gender is in all kinds of science. Not only medical science, but also infrastructure, chemical science, very interesting, and you see all those kinds of fields, and you are amazed that so many things haven't been told before. So yes, I share your view, and you can't change the way of thinking on your own. You have to do it with, many people together. That's so, but we can't go back now.
We have another question here in the front, so maybe you can just throw it over. Yeah. Oh, perfect. Okay.
Good throw. Thank you very much for that very inspirational talk. I have a technical question, although I'm very non-technical. At Holst Center here on the high-tech campus, they work on an ECG patch, which is a wireless patch like a Band-Aid that will do data transmission and replacement of the Holter technology. Is the measurement of the female heart different from the male heart?
Thank you for this question. Yes, it's importantly different. And I have worked with people also at Radboud University who are very good at development of ECG devices to monitor patients. Yes, if you look at an ECG, the normal ECG is derived from the male patient. And most women do have an abnormal ECG because we are not male. And there is, that's true. And there is another issue. We have different sizes of breasts. And if you have a very big size of breast, for a normal ECG, the electrodes will be put somewhere, I don't know where. And then you will see very strange developments. So very often, women, when they come to the emergency department, a young doctor, and mostly the young doctors are there, they say, well, there is something wrong. There's something wrong. Because they can't interpret yet the variations of a normal ECG. Because a normal ECG has variations, which are still normal. Because we also have different ears. We don't have the same ears. Exactly. Is it abnormal? No. It's just a bit a variation.
So we need different algorithms and we need different technology.
That's
so girls out there, do your thing.
And there has been written a lot about that, but it's a very important topic. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Someone's got to throw it.
Yeah, of course.
I will be useless.
Oh.
Sorry. I recently experienced a very sad story. That's
the girl of friends of us, she had her second child, and 5 weeks ago, and she had like a week later a double heart attack. She's 31, and I just wondered, like, how can this be that a young woman has a double heart attack and half of her heart is now gone, and she has a mother and has to take care of 2 children? And I said, well, what's going to happen with her? And he said, yeah, she has in August they're going to examine her, and I was like, in August? I mean,
Well, I've seen young women dying at
Yeah.
that age. Was it a coronary artery dissection? Do you know that?
it was like under the heart, the 2 pipes here. That's what I know about.
Well,
They were torn.
To
the
give
two.
the correct
Yeah.
answer, I need to know the details, but there is a specific type of myocardial infarction that we recognize more and more in young women. Mostly it happens in women between 40 and 60, but it can also happen in women just after having a child. And that's a coronary artery dissection. It happens about 8% in women after birth. But if you look at the prevalence of this kind of myocardial infarction, about 25% of all infarctions in women below 60 are that type. And that's a different type, because if it's not really necessary, don't put a stent in it, because with a stent you make the damage bigger. So there are different rules to deal with it, and still many cardiologists don't recognize it, don't see us, and they do the wrong thing. And what we also see is of this kind of myocardial infarctions, if you look, if it happens in male, yes, but rare. 95% of these patients are women. And we have done a PhD, we had a PhD student studying these patients, and what we see is that stress is an important risk factor for this kind of myocardial infarction.
And she had also thrombosis during the...
Yeah, you get thrombosis always when but also after giving birth, your thrombotic system is still not normal.
Yeah.
So, and what we saw in those women is that perfectionism is often present.
Absolutely.
And I want to warn you all, because it's important, you know, to do all kinds of things in your life, but don't do it all at the same time, and avoid to be a perfectionist. You don't have to do everything perfect. Please, don't do it.
Exactly. I'm so... Because she wants to please everybody, and still now in this situation. And I
Stop
said,
it.
Yeah.
But it's also the social media. We have to look perfect. We have to be perfect. We have to make dinners for 25 people. Nobody gets to eat in my house. No.
Excellent, yeah. And
For me, it's too stressful. I can't do that. So
she has another child of 9, and she has 2 dogs and a job and a house, and I mean...
And the house has to be perfect?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. But that's the problem of this young generation women.
Yeah.
So please, you know, things will come. I was 48 when I got my first, you know, new kitchen, and I still don't cook.
Right you are. Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right, another
Thank
question
you.
behind you.
Thank you for being so inspiring. I'm Bina from Ingelou News. I would like to ask, what is the advice that you give for the women out there in their 30s and their 40s, probably who will be approaching menopause soon? How should they approach menopause within the healthcare system that they foresee?
Well, menopause doesn't have to be a problem for all women, but if you look at the numbers, about 70 to 80% of women will have symptoms in one way or another. And it often starts a few years before you enter menopause, before your last period. Then you have this night sweating, the hot flushes, and you react more to stress. And for some women, it goes on until you're 60 and you have problems to concentrate at work and So it can have a huge impact on your life. But what also happens when you go towards menopause, that risk factors occur. You get more high blood pressure, higher values of cholesterol, and especially when there's heart disease in your family, take care because the risk factors start at that time. And if you had a riskful pregnancy, for instance, a preeclampsia or HELP syndrome or very high blood pressure in pregnancy, you will have hypertension. And that happens mostly when you enter your 40s. So it happens early. So be aware of your own risk. Ask your doctor for your risk and don't accept half answers like my patient did 30 years ago. She said, no, I don't accept this anymore. And try to educate your doctor and you know your numbers. And if you have high risk in your family, start to take pills early. Don't postpone it too late. And I remember I did this PhD when I was 50, and I remember I was sweating a lot at the time, and my interpretation was because it was of this, PhD. Even as a doctor, as a specialist in women, I thought it was that. And if I look at the pictures of, it was 35 degrees when, I got my degree in Utrecht. And if I look at my clothing, I see this sweating there, and it doesn't look so nice. But then afterwards, I still had this sweating, and then I asked at the nurse, can you look at my blood pressure? It was still very high. So since my 50s, I take medication for high blood pressure. So, we are used to interpret symptoms often in a wrong way. So be honest about that and accept it. There's no one who will reach 80 or 85 without any health problems. It's normal. You will get something. It's okay. It's okay.
Very reassuring, yes. Hey, and Angela, you've worked an entire career on the women's heart. Your fight is very strong. But did you ever feel like giving up?
No, but I often felt lonely. And it has also, I realized that on occasions, I made myself a bit lonely because nobody wanted to listen. I got a bit angry. You have to take care that you don't feel too much insulted and that you don't behave as an insulted woman, because that's not very nice.
And how do you do that?
Well, I had a coach on several occasions. First, at there's a Dutch foundation of female healthcare professionals, and there was a woman. She helped me for some time, and then I had 12 years ago. I had a very good personal coach. It cost me a lot of money, but I invested it in myself. And there are days that I see her and I hear her.
What did she say?
Well, the first meeting with her, I drove to what was it, Den Bosch, to her home, and I thought, well, what am I going to do in there? I have no problems. So I came in, and she was very friendly, and she said, well, you can sit there. I'm going to make a cup of tea for you. And while she was making tea, I started to cry. And I started to cry for 2 hours, and then the session was over. And then she said, well, we make a new appointment, because I couldn't stop. So I came home and I said for my husband, well, I paid this and I did that. And my husband said, well, you can cry with me for half of the money. But, you know, there was so much frustration. It had to get out, to start building. And then, you know, in the sessions afterward, we started building. We started to analyze what is the problem. So it was very good. And now I'm doing another training. So it's always good, you know, to develop your profession, your professionally, but also your person. Because you are always the same person, but, you know, things change in your life, things happen, and it's always good also good to take care of your personal development in the different phases of life. So in this phase of life, I'm doing the Walk of Wisdom in Nijmegen with a Comenius group, and I just had last week 2 days, and then we walk, we meet philosophers, and we are all persons 55 and older who are at a certain turning point in life. And then it's good to take time for reflection. Where am I? Am I still okay? What do I want? You know, to take the rest, to think about yourself, how you are in your work, of what your goals or whatever. It helps you. So professional development is important, but personal development is even more.
So what would you say to everyone who is fighting for a change that is not easy to achieve? What would you say to them?
Try to find the good people to walk with you. Try to find the right network. You can't do it alone. You will never succeed to do it alone. I didn't do it alone. So try to find partners inside the country, outside, abroad. I have many mentors, and many of those mentors don't even know that they were mentors for me. Some were men, most were women. And what you can learn from mentors is things they did or how they behaved, and that you think, well, that's something I have to realize. That can be good for me too. And another one does something else. So you can integrate things other people did in perhaps things that you can use to do on your pathway. So I've been reading also a lot of biographies of powerful women. Marie Curie, that's a very big example, but Madeleine Albright is fantastic to read her biography. There are so many women who have been big examples, and you can learn from reading their stories. That's also important for you.
Thank you very much. Give her a big applause. Angela Maas.
Thank you.
Dank je wel. Dat is.